Every man in Ilaje stopped whatever he was doing whenever she passed. By the end of that year, one man had lost his entire farm for her. One man was dragged away in chains because of her. And one man vanished from the village completely, never seen again. My dear viewers, if you love stories packed with mystery and suspense, hit that subscribe button right now. Make you no miss our sweet story. Tap the bell, because I promise you, this story gets messier than you're expecting. Do it now, then keep watching. In the village of Ilaje, there lived a woman named Simisola, known across the land for a beauty that stopped conversations mid-sentence. But Simisola knew exactly the power she held and used it without mercy, collecting suitors the way other women collected firewood, carelessly, discarding whichever one no longer served her. The first man to fall was Tunde, a hard-working farmer. He sold 2 goats for a wrapper she wore once. When she moved on to someone else, he sold 3 more animals trying to win her back, then borrowed against his own farmland to buy her jewelry finer than any other suitor's gift. Within a year, Tunde had gambled away nearly everything he owned, chasing a woman who barely remembered his name between suitors, and the Bank of Traders in the next town seized his land to cover the debts he'd taken against it. The second man was Femi, the blacksmith's son. When he discovered Simisola had accepted a marriage proposal from a trader on the very same day she'd accepted his, the humiliation broke something in him. The fight that followed left the trader with a fractured jaw, and Femi, in a fury he couldn't control, struck the man again after he was already on the ground. The elders had no choice but to hand him over to the regional court. Femi spent that year in chains, awaiting judgment, while Simisola barely spared him a second thought. Her own father, Baba Rotimi, begged her repeatedly to stop before her games destroyed the family's name entirely. 2 men ruined already, he pleaded. How many more before you understand what you are doing? Simisola brushed off every warning with her same careless laugh. Let them suffer a little, she said. It means they truly want me. Then came Adewale, a trader recently returned from the city, wealthier and more composed than any man in Ilaje. Simisola set her fight on him immediately, and something about him felt different from the start. He never boasted about his wealth, never pressed her for answers, simply watched her with quiet, careful eyes that made her strangely uneasy, though she couldn't say why. She told herself it was simply his sophistication. Privately, part of her sensed she was being studied, not courted, though she pushed the feeling away each time it surfaced. What Simisola did not know was that Adewale already had a wife hidden away in the city and had come home specifically setting for a second wife to help manage his business locally. He showered her with attention, promised a wedding within the month, and she, certain she had finally won the prize worth all her games, discarded every remaining suitor without a word of explanation. As the wedding approached, strange details began nagging at her. A trader passing through mentioned offhandedly that he'd seen a man matching Adewale's description in the city market, walking hand in hand with a woman and 2 small children. Simisola dismissed it instantly, surely a case of mistaken identity. Then, days before the ceremony, one of Adewale's own hired workers let slip a comment about the mistress in the village before catching himself and changing the subject entirely, refusing to explain further no matter how she pressed him. Simisola told herself she was imagining problems where none existed. She wanted the wedding too badly to look closer. Meanwhile, the third man to fall was Kayode, a quiet trader Simisola had briefly courted years earlier before losing interest in him completely. Watching Adewale prepare to marry the woman who had once discarded him for wealthier prospects, something inside Kayode finally broke. Ashamed, humiliated by memories he'd never fully buried, he packed his belongings quietly one night and left Ilaje entirely, never telling his family where he was going, simply vanishing from the village his family had lived in for 3 generations. Tunde and Femi's families, both devastated by what Simisola's games had cost them, began quietly investigating Adewale through mutual trade connections in the city, desperate to expose the same recklessness that had ruined their own sons before it destroyed anyone else. Within weeks, they confirmed the truth about his hidden wife. They said nothing to Simisola directly. Instead, they let the wedding preparations continue. Let the whole village gather under decorated canopies, drummers playing, Simisola glowing in the finest cloth she had ever worn, and waited for the exact moment that would humiliate her as thoroughly as she had humiliated so many others. Just as the ceremony reached the moment of blessing, a messenger arrived at the edge of the crowd, breathless from running. Behind him walked a woman none of the villagers recognized, carrying a sleeping child on her hip, her face tight with fury. "I am his wife," she announced to the stunned crowd. "I have been his wife for 6 years." The wedding collapsed into complete chaos. Adewale's face drained of color as his real wife screamed accusations across the compound. Guests scattered in confusion. Baba Rotimi stood frozen in shame as her daughter's carefully built reputation crumbled in front of the entire village within minutes. In the chaos that followed, Tunde stepped forward, his voice shaking with 3 years of buried anger. "This is the same recklessness that cost me my farm," he said loud enough for the whole crowd to hear. "The same recklessness that put Femi in chains, the same recklessness that drove Kayode from this village forever." One by one, he named every consequence Simisola's careless games had caused, and the crowd's shock slowly turned into a heavy, damning silence directed entirely at her. The village elders, hearing everything laid bare, demanded Simisola repay every gift she had accepted under false promises, an enormous debt that would take years of honest labor to settle. Worse, for the first time in her life, she watched real consequences she couldn't laugh away, men who had lost farms, freedom, and homes because of choices she'd made without a second thought. Simisola spent the following months disgraced, working alongside her father in the fields to repay what she owed, avoided by everyone who once fought for her attention. Tunde, still fighting his own bitterness over the farm he'd lost, found himself unexpectedly assigned by the elders to help oversee her labor as partial repayment for his own losses. He arrived expecting to enjoy watching her suffer. Instead, over the following months, he found himself watching something else entirely. A woman waiting before dawn without complaint, apologizing sincerely to people from her past, quietly working to help Femi's family after his release from custody, sending word through travelers to try to learn where Kayode had gone, hoping to make amends even from a distance. It took the better part of a year of this slow, unglamorous change before Tunde allowed himself to trust it. When he finally proposed marriage, it wasn't the same reckless heat that had once cost him his farm. It was something steadier, built on months of watching character rebuild itself from nothing. The whole village watched carefully, half expecting Simisola's old tricks to resurface. But there were no other suitors waiting in the wings this time. No games, no careless promises. She married Tunde in a quiet ceremony and spent the years after proving, slowly and consistently, what her beauty alone had never been able to offer. The people of Ilaje still tell young women in the village a lesson passed down from that costly season. Beauty may open every door in the village, but it's character alone that decides what's left standing once the doors close behind you. If this story kept you entertained from start to finish, do not scroll past without hitting that subscribe button and turning on your notifications. We drop a brand new African folktale every single week, and trust me, you do not want to miss what's coming next.